Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Football League Cup podcast. Now, in the last few days, we've had a roller coaster ride with 12 clubs coming up with a proposal for a European Super League, but now it looks like it's starting to die out. Today, I'm joined by Chris, and we're going to be discussing basically everything that has happened in the last few days and the potential outcome for some of these clubs.
Hi guys, Chris here.
Yeah. So, Chris, I'm sure you'd agree with me. The last few days have been hectic for the football world.
Yeah, I mean it's been interesting, Fred, because you know no one knew this was going to happen. Nobody in the media or UEFA or FIFA, funnily enough, knew that the Super League was going to be announced during the season. It's always been on the cards. It's been noted in the last few years, but it's been very surprising. And I don't know how you feel about it, but it didn't last long, and it only lasted for 2 days. And what it is and you can go into it as well a little bit, is that the clubs thought that they had all the power, or the owners thought they had all the power. And what they didn't realize is that they didn't think that we're going to get this much backlash. So the fact they withdrew from the Super League isn't because they felt the duty of doing it. It was because they had a sense of being forced.
Yeah,
And a lot of the fans, and rightly so, the pundits, the journalists, and anyone connected to football were opposed against it. So it's been an interesting couple of days, and obviously through this podcast I'll talk to you about some of the juicy details and kind of the things of what happened in the clubs that caused this to just withdraw so quickly. And I know there's a couple of clubs still hanging on, but that's just saving face. But we'll talk about those, and we'll go into a little bit of detail about it, Fred.
yeah. By the way, if you want to talk about the Super League or anything in football in general, you can click the link in the description to join our Discord server and chat about these kind of topics with so many other football fans. So, as you said, it almost felt like the Super League clubs were forced into leaving.
Hmm.
Over
Yeah.
the past, we saw some reports that government officials like Boris Johnson, etc., had put
Good old
extreme
boys.
amounts had put extreme amounts of pressure on these clubs. I personally feel he was a big factor in the Super League basically
Oh yeah.
being destroyed. Can you give us a bit more insight on that?
So what happened? I'll give you a timeline. When the Super League was announced, a few hours before a few hours after, the government were already looking at ways to stop the Super League, and this is very early on. And obviously, the fans were, every single fan, they started protesting, and you've seen all of that. And then all the pundits were getting involved, so there was a lot of backlash straight away. And what they don't realize is fan power is massive in football, and fans make up most of the what goes on in football.
Yeah,
So then the owners, a day later, sat down and had an emergency meeting, and still at that point they were looking to stay on the Super League, but they were just getting hounded. And then in the last day when they looked to withdraw, they just felt that it's bad timing, and they should have felt this before. They should have known when to do this. I mean, this was bad timing, and it was appalling how they did that. But then the owners sat down again and said, look, and spoke to Perez and said, look, we can't do this. It's not possible. The government are telling us that they'll put sanctions against us, and they would have done that. So, you know, I don't think there's going to be a lot of legal issues in terms of what's going on with the Super League. I believe that the Premier League acted on behalf of the six clubs to remove them. So, and their lawyers were present during that meeting. So, I don't see too many issues of them actually removing from the Super League, because it was only a statement and intent. Now we don't know the full details, and there'll be more that comes from it. But what I want people to realise is, and what the owners need to realise now, is that they don't have that power anymore to go and just make those big decisions, because they know if they did it again, um, there'll just be even bigger sanctions. And I think there's going to be some sanctions prior anyway from this. And I hope they've learned from it. But unfortunately, you know, I think some of the owners have gone past to the point where they have a future at the club, and I think we're going to see that over the next few days. And when the dust settles, we're going to start to see some stuff unravel. And there's going to be a lot more resignations. And Woodward's gone, as you know,
Yeah,
from Manchester United, which didn't shock me, to be honest, Fred, because I felt that was happening anyway prior to the Super League, because they employed a director of football, and I thought, well, what's Woodward going to really do now? And I felt like he's probably got something else in the pipeline, and maybe the decision's been announced now because of what's gone on in the Super League. So to save face, kind of from his point of view, and obviously save the backlash. And I can't fathom how 12 people, 12 owners, and top of the football, they believed they felt for everything and discussed everything, and yet it crumbled in 2 days.
yeah.
And that just showed. My concern is, and just before you go on, is that what do they do now? I mean, you can see how bad some of the clubs are, because if they're like this, you can see why they can't handle transfers and those sort of things. So we'll go into that. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, as you said, I don't think any of those 12 owners expected that
No.
amount of backlash from the fans. I think, well, they're obviously smart people, very good businessmen. They expected FIFA and UEFA to come for them, and I'm sure they had their own plans up their sleeves to stop that. But I don't think they expected this amount of backlash from the fans. And this proves the
No.
point again that fans run football, fans run every sport. Without fans, no sport can succeed. And that's to all of you for everything you've done. I mean, the No to Super League petitions. You can click the link in our description to sign our petition. Over 6,000 signatures. Now it will be changed to make sure English clubs have 51%, fans have 51% ownership of English clubs. So you can click the link in the description for that. But as you said, where do the clubs go from now?
I mean, look, the first thing that the clubs need to do is sit down with the rest of their league, the clubs within it, because they've got a lot of apologies to make. So that's the first thing they do. Obviously, they'll be invited back into. I mean, they've not left the Premier League, but they'll be invited back into the European Commission. So they'll be back in the ECA very quickly, if not already, to be honest. Because UEFA is going to need them, and we'll talk about UEFA in a minute, because I think they're partly to blame for all of this, and I'll go into that when you ask me the question. But I think the first thing the clubs have to do is because I don't think the communications that they sent out, and those statements they sent out in the tweet, is good enough. And I know that Liverpool owners come out and said sorry, because obviously he wants to continue with the club, but he's not looking to sell. But he might be pressured in that, which we'll talk about the sales of clubs shortly. But that's the first thing they're going to need to do, and they'll have to do that alongside actually speaking to the players and the manager, because some of the relationships within the clubs are going to be broken because they didn't let the players know, and that's not good enough. And that is, to have owners that don't tell their staff that they're going to go and do a Super League, and the media know first before them, is absolutely. I'm outstanding by it. I'm actually appalled by some of these owners, and especially the Juventus chairman. Absolutely ridiculous. He needs to resign, as you can know. But those are the first things they need to do, and they need to sit down and actually have a chat with the fans as well. And there's a lot of relationships that need to be built again, because it has not been good enough, and it has been a disaster, the Super League. And I knew straight away, as soon as they set it up, there was no way they were going to get it through, because of the amount of pressure that was coming on. And I knew it wouldn't last long. So as I said, it wasn't going to go ahead. And I did say it quite a lot in Discord, that this will not go ahead, and it hasn't. And I know it talks about them being suspended, but no, it's not going to happen. Because there'll be sanctions to stop it in the future for sure, and we'll see that come. But those are the first steps that the club need to do at this point.
Yeah, as you said, the clubs will need to talk to fans and clubs, etc. But do you think it's almost reached a point of no return for some of
Mm,
these owners? Because
absolutely.
if you look at owners like the Glazers, they are, I think, one of the most hated owners in football. The Manchester United fans do not want them there. If you look at FSG at Liverpool, I know they still have a few supporters, but I think majority of Liverpool fans don't want them there. Do you think they just have to sell the clubs because it's reached a point of no return?
Look, we all know about the Glazers. Even the neutrals know about the Glazers. And the thing is about the Glazers is they were hated before this, but they had that hate where it wasn't quite enough to do any difference. Now that's changed over 2 days, and I think now the point where the Glazers will be sitting down from a business perspective is that they've probably reached the end of Manchester United and their term. And from what I know is they are actively looking to sell the club now. And I can say that with 100% confidence. And the reason why that's happening is because the Super League was probably their last part at Manchester United, and they probably felt actually that well, we can make £400 million a year here, and we can do this for 3 years. We can also, increase the value of Manchester United, and then we can sell the club. Because that's not happened, I think now they're at the point, and with coronavirus happening and those sort of things, that they will now have to sell the club. With Woodward going, I assume that he's going to be, till the end of the season or till the end of the year, which would probably indicate two things: either that, you know, he needs a smooth transition for a new chairman to come in, or they're looking to sell the club with Woodward, handling that over for the last thing. But I can see, there's definitely that they're definitely going to look to sell the club, Fred. I can't see them staying. In terms of Liverpool, there might be still a chance where Fenway Sports will stay, because they are still quite into sports. But the problem is, and I don't mean to sound out of character, is that most of the American owners, including Arsenal, I reckon they will have to sell. So I can see a lot of clubs doing some few takeovers. It might take a year or two with some of them, but I can certainly see that is going to happen now at
Yeah.
this stage.
With the news you've just given, I mean, the thoughts on every Manchester United fan watching this right now is who could possibly buy Manchester United at this point?
Look, there's a lot of rumours going around, but some princes and those sort of things. We don't, we'll know as soon as we look into the stock and what happens at the end of the New York Stock Exchange every day. You'll see some differences, so you'll start to know, and the ways you'll know for takeovers if investors are starting to dump stock onto the exchange, and you'll start to see that, and then we'll probably see that we'll know. And if you watch the stock closely, you'll know that there's probably a potential takeover coming over. But at the moment, I'm sure there's quite a few people, especially a few princes that will probably they're extremely wealthy, that will want to take over the club. However, I err on the side of caution with that. And I agree. If you looked at an interview what John Barnes said, I don't know if anyone's watched it, but you could get another owner, but they need to have different values for it. You can have the same amount of money as the Glazers, but what if you're the same as Glazers? So what I would say to the fans and what I say to the clubs is that when you are selling the club, you do it in the best interest of the fans and the best interest of the club, and you get an owner in that actually wants to improve the team, improve the club, and doesn't care about lining their pockets. Of course, money's important, and we all know that. The football's been a business since the Premier League opened up, so we all understand that, and everyone understands that is an aspect that will never go away. But what I stress is there has to be the right owners, and this is why I've changed the petition to 51% or sell the club to the right owners.
Yeah.
And those are the two options that need to be done. The fans will need to have, regardless if they don't get 51%, they need their say on these big decisions. And if they don't go ahead, then it's not happening. And Barcelona do that as well. They vote on things. And I think a lot of English clubs could adopt that approach. I don't necessarily agree with some of the stuff that Barcelona do, but as I said, you could bring in that kind of approach. So They need to err on the side of cautions, and some fans are saying, "Oh, I'm going to be happy about a takeover, or it's going to be this, or it's going to be great." They need to be careful who the next owner is because we don't want the same scenario again. So it needs to be a club that's in the best interest. And we'll talk about Manchester City and shortly because they have the right owners, but they were forced into the Super League because they felt they had to. So we ignored that. But they need the right owners, Fred. And that's what I say. And I agree with what John Barnes said. If you haven't seen it already, it's on Sky Sports or BBC, I think.
Yeah, well, as you said, 51% fan ownership of clubs. I know Boris Johnson spoke about it, I think, 2 days ago. Do you think there's an actual chance that that could happen in the near future in England?
I think it is a possibility. I don't think it's 100% certainty. But there is potential. But you would have to look at how the current owners or new owners would sell that share. So we have to be careful how that works. You would have to have a spearhead within that fans. Look, 51% does work in some clubs. Can we do it over here? It might take some time. I don't see it next year happening, no, because it needs the right implementation, Fred. So it's going to need, 2 or 3 years, maybe more. But what I'm saying is, let's put the English clubs on that path. Let's put the English clubs on that path where fans can have an actual view. Because fans need a view in their club. It's been for too long, and obviously I'm not a Manchester United fan, but I do see what happens. The Man United fans have not had a voice since the Glazers have come in. Now that is not acceptable, and it is going to change. And the Super League, whether it likes it or not, has caused an evolution in football where all fans now will have a view in it. I don't necessarily think 51% is going to happen next year, but I am a firm believer that we need to do something like that, or we need the right owners in the clubs. But the fans in an independent body or a governing body, can double check and make sure that these are the right owners coming in, because I don't think the takeover checks have been good enough either, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Well, the next thing we are going to do is we are going to answer a few questions from our Discord members in Discord. If you want your questions answered on the podcast, click the link in the description to join our Discord, as I said. So one person's asking, as you said, Ed Woodward has now officially resigned from his role at Manchester United. There have been some rumors that Edwin van der Sar might take over Ed Woodward's job, because as we know, he is the CEO at Ajax Football Club. Is there a chance that he takes over Woodward at United?
Could be, but not with these current owners. Why would you? Think about it.
Yeah.
If you're a chairman, you're very restrictive in what the Glazers do. So once the club's sold, then yes, Van der Sar would be one on the top of the list, but not with the Glazers. I don't think any chairman who is football related, so Van der Sar is very much football, would be involved in it. And you can see this, Fred, that David Gill left, and then Woodward took over. Yeah. And Woodward's not a football fan, neither are the Glazers. So Van der Sar coming in with the Glazers, it just wouldn't work, because he wouldn't be able to do what he wanted to do. And what he's done at Ajax has been amazing. So he would want that similar sort of platform, just at a bigger level. So once the club's sold, which it will get sold, as I've said, then yes, people like Van der Sar will definitely want to come into the club. And then at that point, you would have your club back, because you don't have it at this stage, but you are going to get it back based on what's happened over the last couple of days.
Yeah. Well, Ishan in our Discord asked the question, which brings us to our next topic. Let's say the Glazers do leave over the next couple of months. Will it have an implication on transfers and the structure of the club? Which it probably will. It makes sense that it will. But how big of an implication will that have on the club in general?
There's two things here. If the takeover is not an easy takeover, if it's someone that is leveraging their money or shorting the stocks or putting it into the stocks, then you can forget about certain transfers this summer, like Sancho, because the Glazers will definitely not, because they're selling the club, they're not going to invest. So but again, there's two sides to the coin. You want Glazers gone, but sometimes you're going to have to sacrifice certain things. And this is why I'm saying I'm not talking about transfers at the moment, because I need to know what's happening with the club first. So I don't think we can really say, if that's the case, I don't think we can discuss deals like Sancho. And I know that's disappointing, but we'll have to see. If the Glazers end up staying, then yes, there's two sides to that. They could try and appease the fans by going to buy Sancho. Do you see what I mean? And trying to get people to forget. Obviously, people are not going to forget, as I said, but that might be their way of saying, look, we're going to go and buy Sancho, Pau Torres. They might go and do an absolute madness, which, I can see that as a possibility, is the final straw, because Glazers are quite naive and they will do that. But if they are going to sell the club, it's not going to be an easy time to sell, because you have to think about how many, it's on the stock market, how many investors are in there, because recently they sold some stocks for 100 million, as you saw. So if the investor could come and offer amount of cash and the Glazers take it, then it's a smooth transfer, and it could take 2 or 3 months, and then potentially we could see some transfers in the meantime, in the sense that someone might be a minor shareholder before they're a major shareholder and take over the club, where they could do that. So it's going to be interesting. If that does happen, then we'll see a good transfer window. But yes, it is certainly going to be affected. And I can't say anything else with that. And I know, everyone says, and I know, if this didn't happen, then yes, Sancho would be 100%, or some of the signings would be 100%. But I'm afraid at the moment I can't give you those details. And I know people are looking for some comfort, but because it's just so early after the Super League and I need to see where everything is, I can't tell you with the confidence that deal is going to happen at this stage. And I know it's not what people want to hear, but this is for the other 11 clubs. Same principle applies. I think Chelsea and Man City will be slightly different, but I know it's disheartening, but we have to see what happens in the next 2 weeks. And that's why I put that announcement out saying I'm not really going to talk about transfers because of what the current situation is. But let's see if the Glazers can sell it quick, and they might be able to do this quickly because the government might push it and actually approve the deal quicker because of what they want to achieve in the clubs. So if that's done quickly, which it can because there's a lot of suitors and a lot of buyers, then we'll see probably one of the best transfer summers for Manchester United if that happens. So let's see. It's all up in the air at the moment.
Yeah, well, if you want any updates from Chris himself or any general updates, make sure to follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. The links will be in the description. So we're going to do something that we do in our transfer podcast. You can listen to all our transfer podcasts, subscribe and hit the notification bell, and you can see everything there. We're going to do basically percentage of particular owners leaving. So all you give me is a particular percentage. So,
I hate percentages.
Yeah, I know.
Well, let's go.
I'm giving it. Okay, so the first one
cheeky bugger.
The first one we're going to start with is the Glazers. Percentage of them selling the club next
90.
12 months.
I'm never going to give you 100%, but I'll tell you 90%. I'm that confident on that one because of what I'm hearing in the background.
Big for United fans. Okay.
Yeah, but the United fans will want that, and the Glazers will probably want a quick exit. Yeah. So because they don't want to, they know that's it for them. So they want a quick exit, and they will want to make sure that maybe that this is the last goodbye. So yeah, 90%, no problems with that one at all.
Yeah. What about the Liverpool owners leaving?
I'm 50-50 with that, only because of he was the only guy that did the apology so far. I mean, I expect the other clubs to do it, and if they don't do it, then that's appalling. But as I said, I generally think that they're trying to keep the club at the moment. What I'll say to the Liverpool fans is 2 or 3 years' time they'll be gone probably, but not until next season, because they'll try, they might try and do madness in the transfer window, but they're not going to qualify for the Champions League at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, the Arsenal owners.
Again, I'm going to give you 50%, only because I think the Arsenal owners are quite naive. And I don't see many suitors for Arsenal, I'm afraid, at the moment. Only because I just think Arsenal are in a little bit of a bad state at the club. I think they're going to be in for a difficult summer. And I'm even less than 50% with Arsenal. I expect him to go eventually because he'll be ousted, maybe by government sanctions or something like that. Because they are looking at it, the government at the moment. But yeah, I know that's bad for Arsenal fans, but
Yeah. As we know, there are still three clubs in the European Super League. I think Juventus, Real Madrid, and Barcelona. It looks like UEFA are going to go really strong on Real Madrid. We've heard some rumors that Fiorentino Perez could step down as president. So, what are the percentages of him stepping down as the president of Real Madrid?
I'll just give some details around it because the Madrid board are not convinced about what he's trying to do. But Perez has a lot of power at Real Madrid for whatever reasons. He's got a lot of connections. I think he's slightly corrupt, and you probably agree with me, Fred. They're all corrupt, including UEFA, which after these percentages, I just want to talk slightly about UEFA and FIFA before we close off. But what I think about Perez is that he'll probably hold on till the end, but I do think at some point that he will have to step down at Real Madrid because the UEFA Super League is not going to go ahead. It's just saving face. If you look at what Barcelona is still in it because they still have to vote, but Barcelona are technically out, but they still have to vote. And they're going to say no anyway. Real Madrid and Juventus are only in it because of the two heads, two idiots, I'd say. The ones that want the Super League, so they're still in it. And Juventus' statement was poor, to be honest, absolutely shocking. And to be a supporter for them, I'm disappointed in them. But all of the clubs could have done better. But Perez, I give you 80% of him resigning. I just don't see his position tenable in football anymore. And if you look at Real Madrid, why would Real Madrid want Perez if he can't handle the pressures and what they've done with the Super League? Because the format and the logistics were shocking. And they didn't even think about most of the things. And the questions, he couldn't answer. He postponed a meeting. It's just been shocking from him. So if I was Real Madrid, they'd get rid of him as soon as possible.
Yeah, well, that brings us to an end of our quick little trivia. Chris, is there anything before we close off?
Yeah, so the last bit is that, I blame the clubs for what they've done. And you guys, you've been fantastic in terms of the support that you've given to the players and the clubs, and some of the players that have come out have been fantastic, like Harry Maguire, Luke Shaw, Jordan Henderson, Bruno Fernandes. Some of the Gerard Piqué came out. There's been loads of different people getting throughout. What I'll say to you though is that there's a couple of things I want to say before we end. Is that this isn't the end of it, because if you look at UEFA and FIFA, they are still corrupt, and UEFA and FIFA do need a reform, and they do need to start looking at how they can make their governing bodies at the moment, because I blame them partly for what's happened, and it hasn't been good enough from them as well, Fred, which has caused the scenario. And the issue as well with them is that suddenly we're finding out that they have $4 billion because of this, and they never told us before. So that just shows you that they have always had the ability to save the clubs, but they didn't choose to do it. So we've got to protest. And the last things I want to say to the fans is we've got to protest for the white owners in the club, control of the club, or being able to make decisions with owners and not being able to make decisions without us. UEFA needs a reform, and I think the UEFA president needs to go as well, because some of his comments were not good enough over the weekend. And some of the stuff he said about players being banned from internationals, absolutely ridiculous. So he didn't help the situation. So I don't want him as the head of UEFA. FIFA also need a reform. Until all these things happen, we're still going to have problems in football. But what I stress is that we need to step up. We need to continue this fight, because if we don't, it's suddenly going to go dark, and then no one's going to forget about it. And you've got to remember, you've got to put rivals aside. We've got to be unified as fans together and make sure that football is football. It's not, it's in the best interest for football, and we get this right. And that's what I say to the guys. And hopefully we're on the right direction now. And I believe we are. And I think this is the time for change. But let's not forget other things as well, because look how we've acted in the last 2 days to make sure we could do what's right for football. There's still racism going on in the world, and there's still violence going on in the world. We need to have the same enthusiasm for all these issues. So, and that's all through football as well. So we need to make sure that we are now stepping up to all of those issues, Fred, and that is where we are with it.
Yeah. Well, if you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. As I said, hit the link in the description to follow us on Twitter and Instagram and join our Discord server. Our website will be coming soon, hopefully shortly after this podcast is released. And say no to racism, say no to the Super League. Glazers out, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye, guys.